Think about everything you learned in school. 12 years of math classes, English, history, science, physical education, all of it designed to give you the foundational knowledge you need to function as an adult in society. And yet somehow, despite all those years of education, nobody ever sat you down and taught you the one thing that literally runs your entire life: how money works. You graduated, you got a job, you started making money, and suddenly you had to figure out on your own how to handle it. Nobody taught you about interest rates or credit scores or taxes or investing or compound interest or any of the things that actually matter when it comes to your financial life. You learned about the Pythagorean theorem, which you've never used once, but nobody taught you how to build wealth. That's not an accident. That's by design. My name is James, and I've spent the last 15 years studying how people make financial decisions. And what I've discovered is that the reason most people end up in financial trouble has almost nothing to do with how much money they make, and everything to do with the fact that they were never taught the fundamental principles of personal finance. They were set up to fail from the very beginning, and most of them don't even realize it. If you want to understand why you're not where you should be financially at this point in your life, or if you want to make sure you're on a better track going forward, you need to understand these things that school never taught you. I'm going to break down the most important financial concepts that they left out of your education, the ones that actually matter. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why your financial situation is what it is, and what you can actually do about it. That was your friend Clarence Capital. Don't forget, like this video and subscribe to the channel. The first thing school never taught you is how credit works. And this is absolutely critical, because credit is one of the most powerful financial tools available to you. And it's also one of the most dangerous if you don't understand it. Most people think of credit as debt, and that's partially true, but that's also only half the story. Credit is actually the ability to borrow money based on the lender's confidence that you'll pay it back. When you have good credit, you can borrow money at lower interest rates, which saves you thousands of dollars over your lifetime. When you have bad credit, you pay more for everything because lenders see you as a bigger risk. The problem is that your credit score isn't taught in any school, and nobody ever explained how it actually works. Your credit score is basically a 3-digit number that represents how likely you are to pay back borrowed money. It goes from about 300 to 850, and the higher it is, the better your financial life will be. But here's what's crazy. Nobody teaches you how to build it. You're just supposed to figure it out on your own. Most people don't understand that paying your bills on time is what builds your credit score. They don't understand that using credit cards and then paying them off is what builds your credit score. They think credit is just something that happens to you, rather than something you actively build through responsible financial behavior. This connects directly to the second thing school never taught you, which is the difference between good debt and bad debt. This one trips people up constantly, because our entire culture treats all debt like it's bad, like you should avoid it at all costs. But the reality is way more nuanced than that. Some debt is actually good. A mortgage on a house, for example, is generally considered good debt because you're borrowing money to buy an asset that typically increases in value over time. A business loan to start a company is good debt for the same reason. You're leveraging borrowed money to create an opportunity that will generate more money. Student loans used to fall into this category, though that's become more complicated. Bad debt, on the other hand, is when you borrow money to buy things that decrease in value or to fund a lifestyle you can't afford. A car loan for a luxury vehicle that depreciates the moment you buy it is bad debt. Credit card debt, used to pay for stuff you don't need, is bad debt. The distinction matters because when you understand the difference, you start making better decisions about when to use debt and when to avoid it. But school never taught you this distinction. They just said debt is bad, which is oversimplifying to the point of being misleading. The third thing is compound interest, and this is honestly one of the most important concepts in all of personal finance, yet it's barely covered in schools. Albert Einstein allegedly called it the eighth wonder of the world, which tells you how powerful it is. The basic concept is simple. Compound interest is when your interest earns interest. If you have $1,000 in a savings account earning 5% interest annually, you make $50 in the first year. But in the second year, you're earning 5% on $1,050, not just the original $1,000. That's compound interest. It sounds like a small difference, but over decades, compound interest becomes absolutely enormous. $1,000 invested at 7% annual returns becomes $8,000 in 30 years. The same $1,000 at 10% annual returns becomes $17,000. That's not because you added more money. That's just from compound interest. Yet somehow, most schools never teach this concept in any meaningful way. They might mention it in a math class, but they don't explain how dramatically important it is for your actual life. If people understood compound interest, they would save money differently. They would invest differently. They would understand why starting to save early is exponentially more important than starting later. The fourth thing is taxes. And this is where school really fails us, because taxes are incredibly complicated, and yet everyone has to deal with them. You start working, you get a paycheck, and suddenly money is being taken out that you don't fully understand. Nobody explains to you what that money is for, or how much of it you should be paying, or whether you're overpaying or underpaying. Most people just accept whatever their employer withholds and hope for the best. Some people get tax refunds every year and think that's a good thing, not realizing that a tax refund just means they gave the government an interest-free loan throughout the year. If you got a refund of $3,000, that's $3,000 you could have been using every month that instead the government had access to for free. The system is designed to be confusing so that most people don't think too hard about it and just accept it as it is. And what's crazy is that tax planning is actually one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available to you, but almost nobody uses it effectively because they were never taught how. If you understand tax law and structure your finances accordingly, you can legally minimize what you owe. But that requires knowledge that school never gave you. The fifth thing is the concept of assets versus liabilities. And this connects to a lot of what we've already talked about, but it's so important that it deserves its own section. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. This distinction is fundamental to understanding wealth building, yet it's rarely explained clearly. Most people think of their house as an asset because they own it and it's valuable. But in many ways, a house is a liability because it costs you money every month in mortgage payments, property taxes, maintenance, insurance. You're constantly paying money out. An investment property that generates rental income, on the other hand, is an asset because it puts money in your pocket. Understanding this distinction changes how you think about purchases. When you're thinking about buying something, you should be asking, is this going to be an asset or a liability? Will this put money in my pocket or take money out? Most people never ask this question, which is why they end up with liabilities instead of assets. The sixth thing that school never taught you is inflation and how it slowly erodes your wealth if you're not paying attention. Inflation is basically the rate at which prices for goods and services increase over time. If inflation is 3% per year, something that costs $100 now will cost $103 in a year. It doesn't sound like much, but over decades it adds up to a massive erosion of your purchasing power. What's worse is that if you're saving money in a regular savings account earning near 0% interest, inflation is actually eating into your savings. You're losing money by leaving it in a bank account. This is why investing is so important. You need to invest your money in something that returns more than the inflation rate. Otherwise, you're falling behind. But schools never teach this. They teach students to save money, which is good advice, but they don't teach them where to save it, or why simply putting money in a savings account is actually a losing proposition long-term if you're trying to build wealth. The seventh thing is how mortgages actually work, and why they're one of the most important financial decisions you'll ever make. Most people take out a 30-year mortgage without really understanding what they're doing. They look at the monthly payment and think that's what they're paying for the house. But the reality is way more complicated. On a typical 30-year mortgage, especially early in the loan, you're paying mostly interest and barely any principal. If you borrow $300,000 at 6% interest over 30 years, your monthly payment is about $1,800. But in that first payment, you're paying only about $1,500 in interest and only $300 toward actually paying off the principal. It takes until year 15 before you're paying more toward principal than toward interest. Meanwhile, if you had that same $300,000 loan but paid it off over 15 years instead of 30, your monthly payment would be higher, but you'd save hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. The point is that most people never do the math on this. They just take whatever mortgage the bank offers them and accept it. But if you understood mortgages, you could make smarter decisions about things like making larger payments or paying off the loan faster, and you could save an enormous amount of money. The eighth thing is understanding your earning potential and actively working to increase it. School teaches you that if you work hard and get good grades and go to college, you'll make money. But it never teaches you how to actually maximize your earning potential, or how much different career choices can impact your lifetime earnings. If you make $50,000 a year and someone else makes $100,000 a year, over a 40-year career, that's a $2 million difference in lifetime earnings. And that's before you account for the additional investments you could make with that extra money. But school doesn't teach you to think strategically about your career in terms of maximum earnings potential. It doesn't teach you about negotiation or asking for raises or switching jobs to increase your pay. It doesn't teach you that in many fields, your earnings can increase exponentially if you develop the right skills and position yourself properly. Most people stumble into their careers and then stay in them without ever thinking strategically about how to maximize their earning potential. The ninth thing that school never taught you is the power of leverage and how wealthy people use it to build massive amounts of wealth. Leverage is basically using borrowed money to control an asset that's worth more than the money you borrowed. Here's a simple example. If you have $100,000 and you buy a house with it, you own a $100,000 house and you have zero leverage. But if you use that $100,000 as a down payment on a $500,000 house and borrow $400,000, now you control a $500,000 asset with only your own $100,000. If that house increases in value by 10%, it's now worth $550,000. You made $50,000 on your initial $100,000 investment. That's a 50% return on your money. Without leverage, a 10% increase in a $100,000 house only gives you a $10,000 gain. Leverage amplifies both your gains and your losses, which is why it's powerful, but also dangerous. Yet school never teaches you about leverage. Most people don't understand how to use it responsibly, which is why many people get destroyed during economic downturns when their leveraged positions go against them. The 10th thing is understanding cash flow versus net worth, which is critical for understanding your actual financial health. Net worth is what you're worth on paper, all your assets minus all your liabilities. But cash flow is the actual money coming in and going out every month. You can have a high net worth and terrible cash flow, which means you look rich on paper, but you're actually broke. You can have a low net worth and excellent cash flow, which means you might not look rich, but you have actual money to work with. The people who are wealthy understand cash flow because cash flow is what keeps them alive. It's what lets them pay their bills. It's what lets them invest. A high net worth person who has terrible cash flow can run out of money surprisingly quickly. Yet school never teaches this distinction. People focus on building net worth without understanding that cash flow is actually what matters more in the short to medium term. The 11th thing is the concept of diversification and how spreading your investments across different areas reduces risk. Most people put all their money in one place, maybe their job, maybe one investment, maybe real estate. If that one thing fails, they're devastated. Diversification means spreading your money across different types of investments, so that if one fails, your entire financial life doesn't collapse. But diversification isn't taught in school, and most people don't naturally think about it. They just invest in what they know or what's convenient. Someone might put all their money in real estate. Someone else might put it all in stocks. Someone else might have it all in a business. None of them are thinking about diversification until something goes wrong. The 12th thing is understanding your personal financial goals and working backward from them to create a plan. Most people don't have clear financial goals. They want to be rich someday, but that's vague. They don't know what they're actually working toward, which means they don't know if they're on track or if they're falling behind. A clear goal would be something like, I want to have a net worth of $1 million by the time I'm 60. Once you have that specific goal, you can work backward and figure out how much you need to save and invest every month to get there. But school never teaches this. They never teach you how to set financial goals or how to work backward from them to create a plan. Most people just work and spend money without ever doing the math on whether they're on track for the life they actually want. Here's the truth about why school doesn't teach financial literacy. Schools are designed to create employees, not entrepreneurs, not investors, not wealthy people. Schools teach you the skills you need to get a job and work for someone else. They teach you how to follow instructions and pass tests. They don't teach you how to think about money. Because if everyone understood how money works, everyone would try to build wealth instead of just working for a paycheck. The system is designed to benefit from your financial ignorance. Banks benefit from you not understanding how credit works. Credit card companies benefit from you not understanding interest rates. The government benefits from you not understanding taxes. Everyone makes money off of your financial illiteracy, except you. So it shouldn't be surprising that nobody's teaching you this stuff. You have to teach yourself. And that's actually both bad news and good news. The bad news is that you didn't get this knowledge in school like you should have. The good news is that everything you need to learn is available to you right now. You can educate yourself. The people who get ahead are the ones who do this. They read books, they take courses, they listen to podcasts, they study how money works. They learn about investing and taxes and credit and assets and everything else that matters. And once they understand these things, they start making better decisions. And those better decisions compound over time into dramatically different financial outcomes. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is that if you're over 40 right now and you feel like you should be further ahead financially, part of the reason is probably that you didn't have access to this knowledge when you were younger. You didn't get taught this stuff in school, so you made financial decisions without fully understanding the implications. Some of those decisions put you behind. Some of them cost you a lot of money. But here's what's important. It's not too late. You still have time. Understanding these concepts now and making better decisions from here on out will dramatically improve your financial situation. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. The compounding effect of making better financial decisions year after year is significant. Someone who learns this stuff at 45 and starts making better decisions is going to be in a fundamentally different position at 65 than someone who never learns it and just keeps making the same mistakes. The first step is to accept that your financial education is something you're responsible for. You can't rely on schools to teach it to you. You can't rely on your parents if they don't know it themselves. You can't rely on your employer or the government or anyone else. It's on you. Once you accept that, you can start taking action. Start learning about one of these concepts. Maybe start with credit if you have credit card debt. Maybe start with mortgages if you're thinking about buying a house. Maybe start with investing if you have money saved up. Pick one area and become knowledgeable about it. Then move to another area. Over time, you're going to build a comprehensive understanding of how money works, and that understanding is going to change your life. The second step is to apply what you learn. Learning something intellectually is different from actually using it to make better decisions. Once you understand how compound interest works, start thinking about your investment strategy differently. Once you understand how mortgages work, start thinking about whether 30 years is actually the right timeline for you. Once you understand taxes, start thinking about whether you're overpaying or whether there are legal strategies you could use to pay less. The application is where the value is. Anyone can know something intellectually. The people who get ahead are the ones who know something and then actually do something about it. The third step is to commit to continuous learning, because financial knowledge isn't static. The world changes. Tax laws change. Investment strategies that worked 10 years ago might not work as well today. You need to keep learning and adapting. Read books on personal finance. Listen to podcasts. Watch videos. Go to seminars. The more you learn, the better decisions you're going to make, and the better your financial life is going to become. Here's what I want you to really understand. The fact that you weren't taught this stuff in school isn't your fault. The fact that you're behind financially might not be entirely your fault if you made those mistakes without understanding the implications. But going forward, it is your responsibility. You're responsible for educating yourself. You're responsible for making better decisions, and you're responsible for the financial outcome of your life. Once you accept that responsibility, everything changes. You stop blaming the system or your parents or your teachers. You take control. And taking control is the first step to building the financial life you actually want. The people who become wealthy are not inherently smarter than you. They don't have some special knowledge that you don't have access to. What they have is a willingness to learn about money and then actually apply what they learn to their lives. They read the books, they take the courses, they listen to the advice, and then they change their behavior based on that knowledge. That's the only difference between wealthy people and broke people at the end of the day. One group understands how money works and makes good decisions based on that understanding. The other group either doesn't understand or doesn't apply the understanding. And that one difference compounds over decades into a massively different financial outcome. So if you're sitting there thinking that you're too far behind, that you've made too many mistakes, that it's too late to turn things around, I want to tell you that you're wrong. It's never too late. You have time. You have the ability to learn. You have the ability to change your financial trajectory. You don't need to become wealthy. You don't need to be a millionaire. You just need to be better than you were. You just need to make better decisions going forward than you've made in the past. And that's completely doable if you commit to understanding how money works and actually applying that understanding to your life. Thank you for watching, and I hope this helped you understand how important financial literacy really is and why it's something you need to take seriously. If you found this valuable, please like and subscribe to Clarence Capital, because we talk about this stuff constantly. How to think about money, how to make better financial decisions, how to build wealth and create financial freedom. That's what we do, and I really appreciate your support. Check out the next video. These 10 things cost more than you think.